Hi, my name is Tanya, and I've been trying to learn Japanese for a very long time. A very long time, like over 15 years on and off. But since I've never had a real goal to work towards, like I wasn't moving to Japan or anything like that, I just kept dropping it. Like I would study for a week or a month, and then I sort of lose interest, and then like a year goes by, and then I start listening to Japanese music again or watch a new anime or something, and I hear the language, and I'm like, hey, I freaking love this language. Why did I ever stop learning it? And then I'd go back to studying it. It's a vicious cycle. So this year I decided to finally take it seriously. Like it's getting ridiculous. I'm either studying it or forgetting all about it. So this year I took a 9-week course for beginners, and I noticed that it wasn't helping me pretty much at all, but there are some pros and cons to taking a course, which I'll talk about later. Anyway, this course made me study on my own much more, so I decided I'd share my routine with those who are also struggling to learn this language. So let's start with the books to use. There are so many different books on the market, and it can be very overwhelming, especially as a beginner, to choose one book to study with. Noticed a lot of people use Genki series, but for some reason when I first saw this book I was like, no, I'm not using that. It seems so complicated. I've also, just a second, excuse me. I've used this book, Japanese for Busy People. This is actually the book that our teacher told us to buy during our course. I don't know if they claim to be beginner friendly, but it is not really. You're just being thrown into situations, and they explain grammar on just one page, like just a tiny little bit, and then there are many exercises that don't really make you think. They just basically write the correct answer or the word you need to use in the parentheses, and you just need to rewrite it. But I mean, it is for busy people, so maybe it is good for some people, but not for me. Anyway, to the book that I actually use. I use Japanese from Zero series. I think if you've ever wanted to learn Japanese, you've heard about these books. I find them to be the most beginner and user friendly. I love how the book and lessons are structured. Everything is explained in a simple language. The lessons are just the right size for you to, study one in a day, so you can just make a schedule for yourself. Also, if you've never studied Japanese before and you don't know hiragana and katakana, I really love that they introduce characters gradually. So the book starts with everything being in Romaji, and then each lesson they introduce new set of characters like Kakuki Keko, and then they substitute the Romaji ones with hiragana, and then it stays like this for the rest of the book. So in the beginning everything's Romaji, and by the end of the book you can actually read whole sentences in just hiragana. And then in book number 2, I believe, they introduce katakana, and then book 3 is kanji. So it's like little by little, and it's not overwhelming for you as a beginner. And also with grammar, they give you new grammar rules and stuff, and then by the end of the lesson they give you a sentence where they use this rule, and then the sentence grows bigger and bigger and bigger, or more complicated grammar wise. So you start the book with being able to read and understand things like nandesu ka, and by the end of the book you can read and understand sentences like anata no okasan no tanjoubi wa itsu desu ka. So it's really cool to see your progress, because not seeing your progress is very tough, and it's probably like a reason number 1 why people keep dropping studying new languages. Also, if you're tired of reading or you just want to switch up the activities, the author of the book actually has a YouTube channel where he goes through all the lessons from all the books, and it's really cool to hear things being explained to you as if it's an actual class, and also things being pronounced in case you're in doubt. He also gives some extra sentences for you to practice, and he waits for you to translate the sentence or, give the answer to the question he gave about grammar or something like this. But beware of the typos, because there are many. In the first book I haven't really noticed anything, but book 2 drove me crazy. There are so many typos. Somebody actually made a document with all the typos from book 2, and there are 6 pages and it's still not all of them. I kept finding more and more throughout the whole book in both English and Japanese. Even in his videos there are sometimes typos on the screen, and at this point it's almost like an inside joke about him and typos. But I don't know which edition I had of book 2. Maybe it wasn't revised, or it wasn't revised enough, so just try to find the latest revised edition. So there are 5 books in total plus kanji from Zero, and I honestly don't know what I'm gonna do when I'm done with them. I've struggled with this for a very long time. Like, do I take a course in Japanese or do I study myself? Because like I don't have a goal, so maybe I shouldn't waste money money on that, but at the same time, I really wish I had a teacher and stuff. So as I said, this year I actually did take a course, and it was an absolute beginner course, and I actually knew pretty much everything that was taught, but there are still pros and cons to taking a course. So pros are meeting new people with the same interests and goals as you. You also get to practice with actual people who can answer you back when you're reading a dialogue, which is a luxury when you're self-studying. You also pick up things way faster because you have more context and you have situations to associate things with. So for example, when I was studying on my own, I couldn't remember the days of the month for the life of me, but it took me literally one evening of practice with people to remember them all very easily. And even though I knew pretty much everything that was taught, I actually did find some useful things, more examples, and some little things that I didn't know, which was pretty fun to learn. And the last but not least, it made me study on my own much more, because I actually had this little goal, like I wanted to learn more by the next lesson. I wanted to get more information, I wanted to get more practice, even though it wasn't like a homework or anything, nobody asked me to, but I just wanted to do it on my own. And the cons are pretty much obvious. It's the price, and it's the fear of wasting your money on something that you don't actually need. And if you have a job, it might not be very convenient for you to attend. And if you've already learned something on your own, it might be a bit hard for you to find the right course for you, because even though I kind of sort of enjoyed it, you don't really want to take a whole course of things that you already know. But all people are different and they study in different ways. So in conclusion, I'd take a short-term course to just see for myself like what kind of thing is happening there, and if you like it or not. Online resources. So let's start with the websites I use. I've seen a lot of videos of people listing the websites they use for self-studying, so I thought I'd just give you the ones that I have never heard people mention or that don't get mentioned enough. So the first two are for counters. The Japanese counters are crazy. There are so many of them, and it's actually baffling to me how are there not like thousands of websites with games and quizzes to help you to learn this, because it's honestly very difficult to remember all of them. So it took me some time, but I did find two websites that actually allow you to practice it. And the first one is renshu.com. This is just basically a sort of a game kind of quiz that helps you memorize and learn new counters. And the second one is josushi.com. It's also for counters. It's pretty self-explanatory, I think. The next website is Tofugu. I actually have seen a lot of people use it, but I think it's awesome. It's like the best website. There is everything you will ever need to learn Japanese, but sometimes the explanations are a bit more complicated. Or like, for example, you want to know the difference between wa and ga or something like this, something like on the level of a beginner, but the explanations are more advanced and you wish it was like explained to you as a first grader, not the middle school or something. They also have a mnemonics page for hiragana and katakana. If you don't know what it is, it's like associating the character with a picture of something. So for example, ku looks like cook's hat, and then they give you a little sentence so you can easily remember it, and you like associate it with it and you remember how to write it then. And it's how I learned, and I cannot recommend it enough, and it's honestly the best way to learn and memorize all the characters. Next are the apps. The first one is Pimsleur, if I'm saying that right. I once bought a subscription for a month and I did learn a lot of new phrases and words, which was awesome. But the one downside is that it's all in audio and I'm more of a visual learner. It is a good method, but just not for me. And I also want to learn the language like more in depth, like understand stuff. But if you want to learn some new phrases and words very fast, that's a pretty good method. And also another downside is the price. It's kind of expensive. So let's see what other apps I use. Infinite Japanese is pretty cool when you want to learn new words. Banpo is a pretty cool app. You can learn hiragana and katakana, people, family, greetings, phrases. Write Japanese, write it, or what is it called? Write It Japanese. It's pretty cool for learning and studying katakana and hiragana because you get to practice and actually write them. Although I prefer writing with a pen, it's a pretty cool app for you to study on the go, for example. And the last one I use is Kana Drill. It's also for hiragana and katakana. It's just, another app for you to practice alphabets. And the last resource, but definitely not least, is YouTube. There are so many creators that are literally doing God's work and explain you all the grammar and literally everything you need for free. So here are my to-go channels. Nin Japanese. I actually found her like a couple of days ago, but I really love her content. She explains things in a very simple language, and then she plays out a scene for you, and then you get to practice with her. Like, she says a sentence and then you get to answer back. Another one is Yuko Sensei. I really love her lessons. Everything is explained and structured in a very easy way for you to remember. It's just a pretty cool channel for you to learn with. Another one is Learn Japanese with Tanaka-san. I found it to be a bit more complicated. Sometimes, like, many videos are more for an advanced level than me, but there are still many videos for beginners. The next one is Japanese Tomato, and even though they sort of stopped uploading a year ago, there are still like several videos that you can watch over and over again, because these are sort of like, can you read in 3 seconds? So it allows you to practice your reading in hiragana and katakana, and then there are numbers and days of the week. Okay, the last portion of the video is tips and tricks. Say everything out loud. It doesn't matter if the book asks you to or not, just read everything out loud. I know that a lot of people find it silly, or they don't feel comfortable doing that. Believe me, this is the best practice you can get. Just read everything out loud. It not only helps you to work on your accent, you can hear yourself saying words, you can hear where you're not saying them correctly or you want to work on something more. It also helps you to remember the words more easily because you hear yourself say that. And also, when you're just reading, like scanning the text with your eyes, people tend to skip over the parts that are difficult for them to read. So when you're reading out loud, you can actually take your time and try to read it correctly. And if you can't, you can Google the pronunciation and stuff. So reading out loud like helps you in a lot of different ways, and it's very important to do that actually. Translate. Even if the book or exercise doesn't ask you to translate this sentence, for example, in Japanese from Zero books, there are many sentences that are just for reading. I like to cover up the English portion and try to translate the Japanese one on my own, and then vice versa. I try to cover the Japanese portion and translate the English one. And it really helps you to find the little misunderstandings or little mistakes that you do, because sometimes you feel like, oh yeah, I understand that perfectly, but then you need to actually translate or say it on your own, and like, how the hell do I do that? I'd also recommend to write down the Japanese translation so you know for sure where you did the mistake and how to fix it. Use different pens, or like imagine you're your own teacher, maybe grade yourself later too. I used to write everything in just one color and then correct my mistakes with the same color, but I recently started to write everything in black, and then after I'm done, I look at the answer key and correct myself using red pen like a teacher. So this way I can see how many mistakes I did, where did I do them, and then later I can do this exercise once again and see if I corrected them or what I need to work on more. Do not force yourself to understand something you don't. It might sound a little weird. Sometimes I just don't understand, so I just skip those and move on. And the further I move from this lesson, the more examples I get, the more context I get to this rule or more usages of the word, and then little by little I get more understanding of how it works. And then I go back to this lesson and I do the same exercises or read the same rules once again, and I'm like, hey, well, why did I ever think it was hard to understand that? It's pretty easy, actually. It doesn't work with everything, of course. Don't even get me started on wa and ga differences. But I found that as long as I don't feel stuck, I don't lose the interest in studying that easily. You can actually move on and study other things and then just go back and repeat or revise stuff that you've skipped. Build a schedule. I cannot stress it enough. The schedule is everything when you're self-studying, because I've noticed it happens like with everything. If you're studying a new language, or you're going to a gym, or you're taking some classes or something like that, when you skip one, you then more likely to skip another one, and when you've skipped two, you're not going to attend the third one, and then you're just like, hey, wait, do I really need that? I don't want to go. And then later you regret not going. It happened to me multiple times with many different courses. It's very important to study every single day, even if it's for like 10 minutes, even if it's just, oh, okay, I'm gonna just do one exercise. Just do that. You don't have to study like for hours and hours. Don't use all the books at once, but also don't just stick to one book. What I mean by that, I've seen a lot of people give up very easily after they don't understand the explanation explanation of something in the book they chose. So for example, they don't understand this particular grammar rule in the book, and they're like, okay, I don't understand this, it's something might be wrong with me, maybe this language is not for me or something like that, and they just sort of give up. But it doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. Maybe the author did a very bad job explaining this particular thing. He did a good job with every other thing, but this one just sucks. So just Google it, read a couple of different versions of other people explaining this, and you might find that it actually makes a lot of sense when somebody else explains it in a much simpler terms. Phew. Okay, this is pretty much it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If somebody even watched this video, I hope it helps you, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.